In today's show, the Blazers wrap up a 7-game, 2-week road trip in Washington and Boston. Plus, we talk about Deandre Ayton and how the Blazers can maximize him moving forward. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. Today's show, we're talking Blazers wrapping up a 7-game road trip with a win in DC over the Wizards and a loss. Game 7 of a 15-day, 7-city journey against the best team in the NBA, the Boston Celtics. We'll talk about both those games. We'll talk about Deandre Ayton a bunch. Ayton has been legitimately helpful and just like good over the last almost 2 months now. And I want to talk about how, assuming he is part of the Blazers' plan, how to maximize what Ayton does. Because it's clear that what he does well, but that also means there's things that he doesn't do. We'll talk about all of that in today's show. And then I have some spare thoughts on Rayan Rupert, who shot really well from 3 on this trip and is showing at least one thing he can do at an NBA level. That was maybe surprising considering what he was supposed to be when he came into the league. And Jabari Walker, who really rebounded the ball in his during this road trip, and talk about kind of what his skill set suggests about how he can best be used in the future as well. We're looking forward, but first, let's do what we do. Fastest recaps in the West, and we're going to do these really fast. The Blazers on Friday evening played the Washington Wizards, and they win 108-102. This game, Blazers led by as many as 12, but this game was close down the stretch, tied 3 separate times in the fourth quarter. And the Blazers, they finally get a 3-point lead on a curling layup from Chris Murray, and the Wizards, with a clock ticking under 90 seconds, get 2 tries at it. Jordan Poole misses a jumper. Blazers go down and they fail to score. They get a rebound, end up giving the ball back to the Wizards on a shot clock violation, but they had a chance to push it to 2 possession games. The Wizards get the ball back again. Jordan Poole again, brick. And the Blazers get the ball back. 35 seconds left, up 3. The Wizards are not going to foul. They're going to try to get one more stop and give themselves a chance. And Scoot Henderson goes to work. Gets the ball at the top of the key with a live dribble, attacks to his strong hand, his right side, absorbs contact, makes a right-handed layup on a little sort of half-scoop sidewinder, and the foul, hits the free throw, puts the Blazers up by 6 to ice the game with the shot clock off, a bucket that sealed it for the Blazers rookie, and they win 108-102. Deandre Ayton, a monster game in that one, 34 points and 13 rebounds. Scoot Henderson, 19 and 7 assists. He was 8 of 14 from the floor and hit 2 of 4 of his free throw attempts. Delano Banton, a big one off the bench, 21 points, 8 boards, and 8 assists. He was 8 of 20 from the floor in that game. Blazers survived 22 from Denny Advia and 20 from Jordan Poole. Jordan Poole just shot a lot of bricks. There's a lot of bricks. Blazers leave DC, leave the nation's capital, and head north to Boston, where they play the Boston Celtics. The Celtics are playing this game without Jason Tatum, but still, Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis, Derek White, Drew Holiday, and Al Horford in the lineup. Like, they have the best record, and I hesitate to call them best team in the league because I think the healthy Nuggets are still my personal title favorites. But the team with the best record in the league, an absolutely fantastic team. They were 61-16 coming into this game, and even without Jason Tatum, a formidable opponent. They end up beating the Blazers 124-107. Here's your second fastest recap in the West. I guess it's your fastest recap in the West, the second one we're doing. But this game was close throughout. Celtics up 6 after 1, up 7 at halftime, up 8 after 3. But the Blazers hung around. It was like basically a 10-point game heading into the fourth quarter, 8-point game, but it's like 10, low double digits early in the fourth quarter, and the Blazers just kind of fell apart. I thought Scoot had a pretty bad sequence in the fourth quarter to give a couple possessions away, and the Celtics, without putting their starters back in the game, closed the game out with Xavier Tillman and Svi Mihalik and O'Shea Brissett on the court, along with Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser. Like, Svi and X are not exactly guys who are definitely going to be in the playoff rotation, and the Celtics didn't have to go back to their starters to close out the game, and they ended up in the fourth quarter kind of pulling away and making this one non-competitive. Blazers pulled their starters, or at least pulled Deandre Ayton with about 4 minutes left, and kind of said, okay, that's, and the Celtics cruised in the end. But this game was mostly competitive through three quarters. Celtics win 124-107, 22 and 14 for Deandre Ayton, 14 points, 18 boards for Jabari Walker, who continues to struggle, 5 of 16 from the floor, but continues to grab every available rebound, 18, including 6 on the offensive glass. 15 and 8 for Scoot Henderson, but he turned the ball over 5 times, 3 of 13 from the floor, 0 of 6 from two-point range. He struggled. Delano Banton back with the team. He started the season, and he had a big one, 28 points and 9 assists. He's 11 of 23 from the floor. Banton kind of... I don't think this was a game where he shot it every single time he touches the ball. This was a game sometimes when the offense broke down and they needed him to shoot it. And early on, he was cooking. Like, he was making jumpers and he was really playing well. It kind of late devolved and took a couple bad shots late in this game. But I think the big takeaways from this trip in general is like the Blazers just like the season needs to be over for them. They've got 4 games left in the season, 3 at home and then one on the road to close it out. They've locked into the 5th best lottery odds. I think technically, as I'm recording this, apologies, this one's a little late. I am not at my house. I am all the way across country in North Carolina, and traveling with a mobile audio video studio required a cord that I did not bring with me, so I had to go get it. Apologies, this one's about basically a day late, and I apologize. It's maybe 15 hours later than I wanted it to get up. Thanks for your patience with me here. But a big takeaway from this is just like the Blazers they kind of just need the season's ready to be over. They're locked into the fifth best lottery odds, 5th worst record in the league. Technically, I think they could win out, and the Raptors could win out, and then there would be they would have the same record, but they're not going to win out. They're going to lose one more game. Once they lose one more game, they're good. They're not going to get caught by the Raptors. They're going to end up with the 5th best lottery odds. There was a chance, if they had tanked really aggressively, that they could have maybe caught the Spurs or Spurs and the Hornets. But when they beat Charlotte, they were pretty much locked into 5th. This is where they are. So for me, it's not so much looking at these games and saying like, okay, here's what they did and like all these things. It's like it's spinning it forward. I think Scoot struggled I think it's pretty bad Sunday against the Celtics. But in general, I think he's shown, some of the things that he just really doesn't do well. He's really got to figure out either a mid-range pull-up floater game or get a lot stronger as a finisher. I think those things are huge for him. He passed the ball really well against Boston. I thought he played legitimately well against, him and DA both had really good games against Wizards. The Wizards are bad, but that's what you're supposed to do. If you play bad teams, you're supposed to have good games against bad teams. That's kind of like the mark of what good players do. They play really well against bad teams. But against a better team, I thought Scoot really struggled on Sunday. The passing is there, the playmaking is there. He's got to develop some in between stuff. The rest of this, it's like the same. My feeling about Delano Banton hasn't changed. He does a bunch of stuff. Would he, in a role where he's just going to have a lot less volume, what will he look like? That remains the question. But the biggest question for me is Deandre Ayton. After starting the season bad, and I think there is some revisionist history going on with Deandre Ayton. He was bad at the beginning of the year. Prior to Christmas, he was bad. He was bad. No matter what he sliced, he was bad. And then he got hurt, and then he came back, and then he got rolling, and he's been good since then. So if you assume that some of it is just, if you shoot him a little bail and you say, hey, there's some growing pains about changing situations and figuring out how to play and getting consistent with playing with a new team and a new system and all those things, and you just... you say, I think the real Deandre Ayton is much more akin to the last couple months than the first couple months, right? And even if it's not, right, even if we have no idea in which direction it is, more importantly, it's like the best version of Deandre Ayton has been the last 2 months. So I kind of find myself asking, like, how do they maximize this? This version of Deandre Ayton, he does what he does really well. gets rebounds, he makes mid-range jumpers. He's been engaged on defense, not like a dominant defender, but an engaged and capable defender. How do they maximize DA? That's what I want to talk about in the second segment. What is a maximized roster around Deandre Ayton? What do the Blazers need to get the most out of DA moving forward? Because that's the real question, is not what happens in these next 4 games or what happened on a forever road trip to end the season, but moving forward, what does a maximized version of Deandre Ayton look like in a Trailblazers uniform? That's what we'll talk about in the second segment. Before we do that, I want to tell you about PrizePicks. It's America's #1 fantasy sports app. It's with over 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on daily sports fantasy action. Well, it's while you're watching your favorite sports and your favorite players. You just pick more or less on a 2 or more player stats projection, and then you watch the winnings roll in. You can get in on the playoff action. The NBA playoffs start in earnest on April 20th, but you're going to get the play-in rounds on April 16th, 17th, and 19th. So April is going to be a whole bunch of fun for NBA fans, and you can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks. It doesn't have to just be basketball. That's usually what I play on PrizePicks, because it's what I'm most comfortable with. But they got basketball games. They got hockey as long as the NHL is rolling along. If you're listening to this on Monday, this evening's the final game of the men's college basketball season. You can get in on that as well on your PrizePicks entries. It's America's #1 fantasy sports app. So why not download that app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA when you make your first deposit and get up to $100. Download that app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Dollar for dollar on your first deposit up to $100. It's PrizePicks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right. Let's talk Deandre Ayton. Deandre Ayton was I don't think he was particularly good against the Celtics, but he wasn't bad. I mean, his big game, 22 and 14, like a big box score game, but 11 of 23 from the floor, didn't get to the foul line. Kind of just like someone has to fill up the space type of game. He was very good against the Wizards, like 34 and 13, is 13 of 25 from the floor, took 9 free throws in that game, it blocked a couple shots, had 2 steals. The Wizards are playing without bigs, right? They're just basically void of NBA level bigs. But that's why you have 34 and 13. You say, the only dude in the gym right now who is an NBA level center is me. I'm about to show it. Like that was a positive night from Deandre. And I think the Celtics night is like end of a million-year road trip against a really good team. And he wasn't bad by any means. I just don't think he was very good. But he can. I mean, he's a legend in the box score. Dude fills it up always and forever. But I think the takeaway for me is like, what does the best version of Deandre Ayton in a Trailblazers uniform look like? Like that's what I left thinking from these games over the weekend, and also from sort of maybe the season in general. It's like, how do they get the most out of him? First of all, it's a couple things. Deandre Ayton, what he does, he's about as good at it as anyone in the league. He's as good as a mid-range jump shooter, particularly off little catch and shoots, like catching the ball in the pocket off pick and rolls and shooting mid-range jumpers. He's about as good as that as anyone in the NBA from that spot. Like that particular skill, DA is better than anybody, pretty much anybody else who suits up. He's really good at it. And he's playing with subpar guard play. As you know, the Blazers are hopeful that Scoot Henderson blossoms into a very good point guard at some point. He's not that right now. And he's a good passer. That's probably the strength of his game right now is his playmaking. I thought he had some really nice passes, including one right-hander through a double team to Jabari Walker in the paint. That's just like, yeah, that's a dime. But even some of the passes that aren't his assist, just the skip to the corner, like off the bounce, like Scoot makes some really nice passes. That's the strength of his game. But overall, he doesn't get guarded like an elite point guard. And so DA is playing with subpar point guards. Delano Banton has been probably a better playmaker than I would have guessed he would be for the Blazers for the most part, but he's mostly a scoring guard. That is his strength. He's not a great table setter. He's a scoring guard. He's a dude who scores. And DA's most of this run, the last couple months of the season, hasn't come with Malcolm Brogdon healthy. He has had, in and out with Anthony Simons in and out of the lineup, and particularly recently out of the lineup. And DA has been put up big numbers and had nice nights and had some efficient, high-scoring nights without high level and probably without even average level NBA point guards. So he's really good at what he does, and he's been able to do it without Chris Paul, right? He's been able to do it without an all-time great sort of table setter setting him up. And I think that was some of the criticism of him, is like, you gotta have, well, if he has Devin Booker and Chris Paul, then he'll be fine. But without him, it's like, no, he's been productive. He's been productive with bad guards. What if he had good guards? So that's the first thing I think about when I think about was like what the Blazers would need for DA moving forward. He would need an above average to even like legitimately good point guard to set him up, particularly someone that draws some attention. So DA's sort of pick and pop game or slipping into space off of when he gets double teamed and just like catching the ball in the pocket behind a double team. Those spots where he can go up quickly. I think early in the season he wasn't going up quickly on those mid-range jumpers. This later in the season he's been much more decisive in those spots, and the Blazers have done a better job getting him in those spots. Da had a conversation in the locker room with Casey Holdahl after the Wizards game, and he was talking about how, like, part of the season for him was figuring out where he likes it, and then he used the sentence, and I thought this is very telling, where he needs it. And I think that's a big part of DA's game. He needs the ball where he can work from, because one of the weaknesses of his game is that he just doesn't create a lot on his own. If he catches it in that sort of like high school 3-point arc, like 18 or 19 feet, and can shoot maybe one jab step and shoot, or go up quickly and shoot, it's cash. Like, he shoots incredibly well. Very, 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 very high level mid-range jump shooter. But if you give it to him and ask him to create off the bounce or get into his own offense, like, that's not his game. It can have bad results. He's gotten better as a playmaker, but he's not like this. He's not a natural passer and all those things. What he is a dude who can really shoot it, and he's mixed in some roles in later half of the season where he can roll to the rim. So he can be a finisher of plays, either as a jump shooter or a dunker, layupper, like as a roll man on offense. He's a play finisher. So you don't want to, he can't be a hub. It's hard to play through him. You can't throw it to him at the elbow and run 6 cutters off him and get productive offense. And he probably never will be able to do that. So it's not like, I think a lot of times when we analyze guys, we worry about what they can't do and, if he could do this. And I think that, particularly for guys who've been in the league 5-6 seasons, instead of saying if he could add this to his game, I think it's better to think about, this is what he does well, how to maximize it. So one, as I mentioned, is maximizing DA with above average guard play, better guard play, because better guard play would give him even more opportunities. He's already darn good at it without the guard play. If he had above average guard play, he'd be really good. The other thing is more space. They need more shooters. The Blazers right now, I mean, this is obvious for pretty much every aspect of the Blazers offense, but I think it's particularly true of DA. He wants to catch it at the foul line. He wants to catch it in the middle of the floor, and he wants to go to work. He gets it on the wing occasionally, but mostly that middle of the floor, right at the foul line, at the nail, go to work, make his jumpers, or pump fake and make one move and get into a right-handed hook. Like that's his office, and he wants to operate there. But to get a guy space in the middle of the court, you need players that pull the width out, right? That expand the width of the defensive responsibility. And the Blazers need shooters. So I think the best version, like the maximized version of DA, above average point guard play, shooters, and a secondary playmaker. So I think this is key for the Blazers period, is they don't have a lot of secondary playmaking right now on the roster. They've got, sometimes when they play two guards, they do have, when they play like Anthony Simons and Malcolm Brogdon. But I'm not like under the sort of, when I'm talking about moving forward with DA, I'm talking to both like the medium and long term. And I don't think in the long term, both Malcolm Brogdon and Anthony Simons are likely to be on the roster. Joe Cronin might surprise me. and I'll complain about that right here on the program. But for the most part, it's like my assumption is that one of those two, if not both, are not for the long-term haul of this team. So it's adding playmaking. And I don't know who that is right now off the top of my head, but adding playmaking, another playmaker, particularly, maybe that's Shaedon Sharpe. Maybe he becomes that playmaker, and maybe Delano Banton sticks around and continues to grow as a playmaker, and maybe maybe Scoot Henderson, continues to evolve and becomes the high-level point guard the Blazers envisioned him being when he was drafted 3rd overall. But for right now, I don't think they have that secondary playmaker on the roster, particularly someone who's like a non-guard size secondary playmaker. Two guys who can make plays, and I mean off the bounce, draw defenses and pass the ball off the bounce. That would really, to be able to attack and run a pick and roll, or drive and kick, or drive and find Find DA when he's spaced to where he wants to space to and all of those things. And particularly just like command attention off of double team and get off the ball and get Deandre Ayton spots in the middle of the court with shooters to spread out so you can't help as much. That's the best version of Deandre Ayton. The Blazers are a little ways away from having all those boxes checked. But I will say, and I'll repeat it again here, is like, for the most part, DA has been productive with bad guards and no shooting. If he could continue to be productive with better guards and better shooting, you might even get a more efficient offense out of him, or he would be like a true weapon complementary part, right? Like if DA can put up like a cool 22 and 10 when he has like kind of a bad night, right? Which I think he did against the Celtics, like an easy 20-point double-double when he didn't play particularly well. He just like, he gets it done. If they had more shooting and they had more playmaking, then he's an easy, 24 and 12, or if he needs to be like a secondary option, an easy 18 and 9, because he's really good at what he does. At some point, what he doesn't do, if the Blazers, as they like climb up the ladder, becomes more of a thing that will stand out. But for right now, as they're trying to go from a bad team to a decent team, getting to decent just means maximizing your skill sets. And I think DA would be maximized with better playmaking and better shooting around him to give him space to do what he does, which is finish plays as a pick and roll man and as a spot up and high post jump shooting threat from the middle of the court. Okay, I want to share some thoughts about both Rayan Rupert and Jabari Walker, who are kind of doing things that we both knew they could do and didn't know they could do at all here in the final stretch of the season. That's what we'll talk about to close the show. Rayan Rupert is a shooter? Who knew? Let's talk about that and to close the program. But first, let me tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. It's freaking LinkedIn. It is the service we all are already using to share our online professional profiles. LinkedIn has a vast network of over 1 billion people, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to quality professionals that you can't find anywhere else. And LinkedIn does it all while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates right there for you. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats, and you might not have all the resources that you need to hire. So they're always finding ways to make that process easier. They've even launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making every part of the hiring process from starting to finishing simpler and faster for you. Over 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So if you think it could be right for you, post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. The end of this season run for the Blazers, the final handful of games here as we get down to it, the final 7, we're down to the final 4, but this final road trip, I think they saw some stuff, right? Like I think, particularly from, they're beat up, they're injured, they're playing guys that would be sort of naturally the back half or out of the rotation, but they're playing youngsters, and there's some value in playing youngsters at the end of the season because you kind of see what you have, and sometimes you get to see what that you have in a role that would be a little more expanded for them than if the team was fully healthy. And I think, they've penciled in Rayan Rupert, a second round draft pick, into that sort of into a starting role, and he's playing about half the game. And during this road trip, Rayan Rupert shot 42% from 3 during 7 games, 15 days, 7 different cities, just a mammoth road trip to end the season. If the Blazers had been in the playoff race, how brutal would this have been? How brutal would this have been? Ending it in Boston, you even get to the end of the line, and it's like you play some bad teams at the end of the trip, which is always tough. Charlotte and Washington, like in games 5 of 6 of a 7-game trip. It's like what we're playing bad teams in a hard part of the schedule. Oh, this is tough. Like this. when the Blazers are competitive in the future and they do get a end of March, beginning of April 2-week road trip, we want to circle to be like, this is a hard one. This was just like kind of a brutal one for a team that is not particularly interested in winning. But during this road trip, Rupert shot 42% from three across 7 games. Dude is splashing down. I don't know what the French word for splash mountain is, but someone emailed that one to me. Maybe that was a joke. I should have looked up. Shout out to my elementary school French days. But Rupert becoming a shooter is a pretty big surprise to me. Coming in, I thought he was more of like a guardy type player. Like the scouting report on him was that he was like a big point guard type player. Became pretty clear in summer league that he was A, a wing, and B, really far away from being a positive contributor. It's just like a raw, you draft a teenager in the second round, there's going to be a couple years probably before they end up being a high-level contributor. And Rupert probably still is several seasons away, at least a full season away from being a high-level contributor. But the shooting is really intriguing because he wasn't really supposed to be a shooter. He was supposed to be like a defender who had some off-the-bounce game. The thing is, he doesn't have any off-the-bounce game. Under 24% from 2 on this very same road trip. 42% from 3, and mostly standstill shooting, but he has shot a little off movement, but mostly standstill shooting, but knockdown shooting. Like if Jabari Walker or Chris Murray was doing that, they'd be ball players. They'd be high-level ball players. They'd be really good wings in the league if they were shooting 42% from 3. Rupert, he just doesn't, some of the decision making, some of the ball handling skills, some of the finishing and like getting all organized on taking twos and the touch and all is just not there for him. He doesn't have much else on offense at all. But at his size and his athleticism, being able to shoot is a really nice building block to start with. And I think it's been a noticeable positive during this long road trip, and hopefully he continues into the final 4 games of the season to end on a positive note for him. But it's been a notable sign that it's like when Rupert shoots, I feel like they're going in. Like he's getting up a lot a game, 4+, and he's had plenty where he's shot 3 of 8 on nights when he's playing like 28 minutes a night. And then when he plays starter minutes, he's taken like a bunch of threes, 6+ threes a game. And he's shooting well, 42% from 3. He's got a long way to go, and there's a lot of other boxes to tick. But if you are trying to find a way to stick in the league, having some defensive upside, I don't think he's a very good defender yet, but he clearly has some tools on defense and to get there. And the shooting, that's the outlines of a player. Again, they're fuzzy, and he's a long way away. But I thought that has been notable through the back half. Final 3 weeks of the season here that he's been shooting well. Jabari Walker has been the other sort of role player type of guy that I've had my eye on because he's been gobbling up rebounds. He had 22 the other night, and then he has a for him kind of a down game against the Wizards with only 13, and then he comes back with 18 more against the Celtics. Deandre Ayton is not this DeAndre's had some big rebounding games, so I don't mean to say he's a bad rebounder, but Jabari is a rebound out of your zone type of rebounder, and Blazers don't really have other guys like him on the roster. He chases rebounds down, he snatches them with one hand, he gets them in a crowd. He's got strong hands if he gets his mitts on the ball to snatch it away. He's got great instincts for rebounding. He's good at it. And last year, heading into at the end of the season, I said, and then starting this season, my sort of scout on Jabari, if you're a longtime listener, shout out to my everydayers, was that Jabari's one bankable NBA skill is that he can rebound, but I'm not sure what else he can do. And as we head at the end of year 2, I kind of feel the same way about him, except that the rebounding has gone up even to another level. He's not just an NBA level rebounder. He's a good rebounder in the NBA, right? He's a plus rebounder in the NBA at his size. Jabari struggles to shoot, has really struggled to shoot this season. I think his jumper, the mechanics clearly have changed. He's worked on changing the mechanics of his jumper, and it looks a little better, but it doesn't go in. He's shooting under 27% from 3 on the year. Under 30% from 3 is just it's not viable, right? Particularly for him, who's mostly going to play an off-ball role and mostly play a forward role. I think he's a pretty darn competitive defensive player. He's not a great defensive player at any points, but he plays his butt off, and I really like his potential to be switchable on that end with physicality, to play up a couple sizes because he's physical, and to be competitive enough. And he's not like crazy quick, but I think he can guard threes okay in small stretches because he's competitive and he wants to play defense. A guy who has some defensive versatility and can rebound, much like Rupert with the shooting, is like the outlines of an NBA player. Jabari's further along, but the offense remains a question. I thought for a while that he was going to be someone who kind of, because he's undersized, ends up a dude who's just a foul magnet because he gets under people's arms and he's like, getting guarded by a bunch of dudes who are 6'10" when you're, almost 6'8", and you could just have a knack for it. And he's still above average at drawing shooting fouls according to Clean the Glass. He's like just shy of the 70th percentile, but for a while there he was in the 80th percentile. Like it hasn't stuck. I would say he's good at drawing fouls, but I thought it was going to be great. Like I thought it was going to be a high level skill for a second there this season. It looked like he was trending that way, and it hasn't really stuck with him. In part because he probably doesn't get the drives. You can be a little more judicious on hanging back on drives because he's not a shooter. But I feel a couple different ways about Rupert and Walker, and I'll close on this thought. The Blazers have a lot of young players who do either one thing well, and if they added another thing or two things, they could be a player like Rupert. Oh, he can shoot. Well, I guess he can shoot it. What else can he do? Or someone like Jabari, who he can really rebound. And he's a competitive defender. What else can he do? And Walker, to be clear, is like really easy to root for. I like his game, even like recognizing his like serious limitations on offense. Or Chris Murray, who seems to do a lot of things well, but the lack of shooting might really be a hindrance in his viability as an NBA player, right? And I don't think this is like immediate, right? Like I don't think this decision is like in June or July or this summer even. But at some point, the Blazers, and this is like the challenge of building a young team, particularly when you're building a young team with second round picks like Walker and Rupert, like you're hoping these guys hit. But you kind of have to gamble in some sense on which guy is going to be able to say, this is a skill I have and can build forward, and which is a guy who says, this is a skill I have, but I'm not able to build forward with it. Again, I don't think the Blazers have to make these decisions this summer, but they do have to, in the probably this time next year, these decisions either will have been made for them by the obvious play, either the development or lack thereof of young players, or just the roster crunch of natural of how the NBA works is that you have to draft new players every year, and the sort of the churn of new youngsters coming in behind the guys who are no longer the true youngsters just happens. I think Walker has some skills that are viable, useful, and interesting. I think Rupert has a level of shooting that means that if you added more stuff, you could get there. Neither of them are probably plus rotation players. Rupert's not even close, but even Walker is probably not a plus rotation player as it sits today. But it strikes me that the Blazers have some role players that have some skills, and that the challenge that comes next, and I don't even have the answer to this, but the challenge that comes next is banking on which guys can add to those skill sets and become not a player with skills, but a skilled player. That's the next challenge for them. And I think Rupert and Walker are two sort of interesting case studies in how hard it is to find players and develop them and make sure you pay everybody at the right time and build forward and all of those things, because you are afforded patience, but you are not afforded unlimited patience. And the balance of when to be patient and when to move on is really, particularly when you're starting from where the Blazers are talent-wise, a really challenging aspect of team building. Okay, that is going to do it for today's show. Tomorrow's show is going to be a mailbag episode, so if you got mailbag questions, you know where to find me. LockedOnBlazersPod@gmail.com. If you don't know where to find me, send me your questions there. I got a bunch already, so I will bring that show to you. I appreciate you listening. Tell your friends about the podcast. I'll talk to you soon.